Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
I got to bed late last night, and it boggles me that I don't get more sleep. My wife, Jeanette, who sometimes passes on my bow ties, says that if I sleep only 5 hours a night, I will have a shorter life. And it is her desire. She declares that I live as long as I can. And so 7 hours of sleep would be better than 6. I took up with me to bed last night as I went up from a late phone call with Title 55 of the Tennessee Code Annotated. It's a big volume. And I'm glad to say that I have a whole set, not too old a set of the Tennessee Code Annotated. And I have spent a lot of time in Title 55. And I was hearing a lecture in the past few days as I'm tootling about on sales calls about Texas, about the Texas Transportation Statute. And one interesting thing about Texas is that the speeding laws are unenforceable except in the case of an accident. And of course, no jurisdiction in that state will pays any mind to that there be a connection to an actual mishap. Now that speeding law rule comes from the common law origins of American law, and that would be that if there's no injury, there's no wrong, right? If you have a speeder and there's no injury, there's no wrong. He hasn't done anything wrong, and though he may be raising risks to others, he faces the penalty himself of causing an injury or death, right? He bears that risk personally, but. As I went upstairs, I thought, man, I've heard about that in the Texas statute, and I wonder if Tennessee has little hidey holes of secret obligation upon the state, like Texas's rules do. And I looked in the provisions for the use of cars and trucks and what are called vehicles, and noticed highlighted in various portions here and there in a few pages that I took time to read. The commercial language of all those rules. They apply to commerce, and they apply to vehicles and operators of motor vehicles, and parties called drivers, operators, and passengers. These are people involved in commerce. I couldn't find in the speeding section that provision like that in Texas that says there has to be an accident before the charge of speeding can be applied. Right, and it may be there, and because the speaker who had studied this issue in great detail, and comes highly recommended to me by people such as the Gnome of Strawberry Plains. He says that there are many things that can be brought up in defense by claims of commercial government against you in court. The question that I have in my mind right now is pertaining to a law that I'm holding in my formerly ink-stained fingertips. Formerly ink-stained, I say, because David Tulis, your host here at Bigger Radio, was for 24 years an editor at the Chattanooga Times-Free Press. My job as copy editor that ended up handling the business section was to make the business writers there, Dave Flessner, Ellis Smith, who's a good libertarian, by the way, and Mike Perry, and earlier on, John Vass, to make them look good. That was my job. Designing pages, editing, and arranging the national, international, and local news in that section C. And so that's why my hands are formerly ink print, newsprint stained, as I say. But I'm holding in these mitts several pages from the public acts of the state of Tennessee, passed by the 70th General Assembly, the extra session in 1936, and the regular session in 37, sent to me in 15 minutes time on request by the state archivist as an attachment. Now, the question I have about this act, which is passed just in the height of fascist America, the height of fascism worldwide before World War II, that created the Uniform Motor Vehicle Operators and Chauffeurs License Act, and it's called the 1988 revision refers to the Commercial Driver's License Act. So that there are indications even in the names of these laws that they apply to commerce. The question that I have is the question that is before the Tennessee Court of Appeals on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, is did the passage of that act destroy or abrogate a property, an important personal God-given property right guaranteed by the Constitution that you, my listener, have. Now, the state is in a bind here. When you ask the question the right way, you put your opponent sometimes in a bad position. If it says yes, well, then the act is unconstitutional at every point that the state might concede that it's unconstitutional, and it has to be thrown out. If it says no, the act is not unconstitutional, well, then it must mean that the act has commerce in view, and it does not have private users of the highway, of the public right-of-way, the free right-of-way that belongs to the people. It doesn't have that use in view. Now, you might say, well, why is this talk show host in Chattanooga? I've heard him once before, and he made a big deal out of this question before. Why is that so important? Well, there is a prospect of the court's interest in the state. The Court of Appeals and the Tennessee Supreme Court is a pro-government body, right? It really is not about the Constitution much, except when it can, right? It'll do it when it's convenient, uphold a constitutional right. But generally, it supports the government and what I call commercial government. That's why there is a deep state operating even in Tennessee. And I call it that with scare quotes around it because I know you, my listener, have heard it popularized in the past year in talk radio on the national side, right? Donald Trump is said to be the free candidate, not the deep state party that was Bill Clinton's wife. She was the deep state candidate. She was the war candidate, the industrial military complex candidate, the banking interest complex candidate as well. And though Donald Trump is a New Yorker and they move in the same circles, he was not owned by the machine, if you will. And so we hear that term deep state in that context, and also in the context of other national stories. But there is one in Tennessee as well, and it's just called commercial government. I like the term commercial government because it sounds so boring. It just sounds so tedious. But what happened in this act is that it created a system of regulation for an activity called transportation. And that is something that touches on interstate commerce and that touches on commerce. And commerce, what is commerce? Commerce is the buying and selling of goods and services. And transportation is the act of moving people and goods around for pay, right? It is something where people make a profit providing a tremendous service. The American trucking industry, the transportation industry, is a vital part of American prosperity. And it uses the rail, right? It uses airports and jets. And much of it uses the roadway, the public roadway paid for by taxpayers who pay taxes to their states. They pay income taxes. They pay other taxes. And also, they pay taxes when they have transactions to buy fuel. They pay a tax on that, on the privilege of engaging in that transaction. They pay, in our state, it's about 9%. And that's divided among counties, cities, and the state. So transportation is vital. So this law that I'm holding in my formerly ink-stained hands creates rules for that activity, a regulated activity, a regulable activity. Now, on Tuesday in Nashville, there's going to be a hearing on an appeal in a criminal case. And I'd say it's the most important case to come before that body since 1937. So it's about 80 years now that we've been under commercial government. And this is the first proper challenge to it. And I say that because by my judgment, the defendant is asking the right questions. In Ashwander versus TVA, the judges in Washington explain how they decide cases and what they do. And one point that comes out of the Ashwander discussion about judicial authority and judicial obligation is this, that if you ask the right question, you'll get the right answer to that question. If you ask the wrong question, you will get the right answer to the wrong question, and that really won't help you. So the defendants we've had in Tennessee, whether in Sullins v. Butler, which hit just about at the time of World War II, and more recent cases, the Boer case, the Ballinger case, and others of note, they let the judges get away with murder effectively. They let the judges avoid the question that this defendant is asking, and they can't avoid the question this time, though they have grounds to avoid it. They do if they follow the state's lead, and it's niggardly brief. they will dodge the issue. But there are some substantive issues raised about property rights and constitutionally guaranteed God-given rights to movement. Do you have to ask the state permission to go to church? Well, we all say that we do, because we won't go to church in our cars unless we have a license, right? Unless we have a car that meets the state's commercial rules for the use of the people's roads. And that's what's going to happen on Tuesday. This law, the 1937 driver's license law, is going to be looked at. And did it destroy the right of travel that everybody enjoyed prior to 1936, and they still do today, or did it not? And in which case, if it didn't destroy that right, which of course would make it unconstitutional if it didn't destroy that right, then it applies only to commerce and not to Hispanic people and private people, the kind of people like Basil Marceau, right? Basil Marceau is involved in this issue, and he is not amiss to be involved in it. I'll have you know that Basil Marceau has many good ideas, though he doesn't express them very well sometimes, and he may not be a great writer. His work has been a torment to clerks around the state when he has been involved in court actions, which has been all the time, right? He's always involved in a court action of some kind in criminal jurisdiction. And he is a kind of legal activist, and I would say that he's not, you shouldn't dismiss him for the points he's making. And you can find out more about him if you read Nooganomics.com, where I have taken great pains to analyze some of his ideas, and they are they all say they're remarkable. It makes remarkable assertions, and I probably had very few smarter people here on the microphone than Basil Marceau, even though because he has only 2 teeth, right? He may be a little hard to understand. Well, this is David Tulis. I do thank you for giving me just a minute of your time. I wanted to mention that in a few days, on July 21st, a Friday, and July 22nd, Saturday, at 9 o'clock on each day, there's going to be the Homeschool Expo here in Chattanooga. It's $8 per family to get in for 2 days. It doesn't cost much, and your entry fee will let you in. There's a form you can fill out if you want to do it ahead of time. And it's not the process for signing up for this event is not online, though I strongly suggested that this nonprofit charity which runs this expo do so. But you can find out more about it and download the form to print out and fill in at csthea.org. That's csthea.org here in Chattanooga. There are 70 exhibitors. There are all kinds of experts in educational questions. If you have children in public school and maybe one with a reading problem, well, maybe there is a remedy. There are reading experts there. There are reading curriculum there. You can buy phonics books there. Phonics is highly stressed among the most literate group of students in the city. That would be homeschoolers. Probably also in some of the elite private schools, you have the cream of the crop academically. But homeschoolers have many advantages, and they've done great work in resisting the tide of glory, you might say, that we have washing across Chattanooga today, and that is on 2 points, 2 giant droplets, if you will. One is Candace McQueen, the education commissioner, in town to help us with 5 failing schools. Right, only 5 are failing, so that's the story. And then also the naming of the engagement by contract of Dr. Ryan Johnson as the superintendent. These are important people, and we're supposed to think that when these people are here, they're looking out for us, and all is going to be brought back to normal. Our great public school system will be back in top form again now that the chaos is over, right? The Ottawa rape case chaos and the resignation of Superintendent Smith, it's all over now. It's all going to be good again, and we don't have to think about schooling at all, right? We just let the experts handle it. Now, there's the stories in the past few days about Candace McQueen and the missing tests and that kind of thing are they're news. I grant you that they're news, and it's easy to play that is straight news. But of course I can't do that. You don't have time for me to play it as straight news, do you, my listener? And I do thank you for giving me just a couple minutes of your time here. But the idea of testing really bothers me, because what we need to have in vis-a-vis the testing regime is more Bartleby the Scrivener's. Now, Bartleby the Scrivener is a character in a short story. I remember reading it at the University of Virginia when I was a freshman. A short story by Herman Melville, and he's a clerk in an office who just won't do what he's told to do, and he says, "I would rather not." And I think as regards mass testing, which controls the academia, it controls what children learn, it controls how they learn. It is a shackling of teachers, right? Teachers who have a really genuine interest in knowledge and education, and often in their subjects, they are shackled by mass testing. You should be doubtful about mass testing. And there's a John Taylor Gatto in one of my favorite books. I've got several of his books are my favorite ones, including Dumbing Us Down, and then this one here, Weapons of Mass Instruction, which I'm holding up for my viewer on YouTube and on Facebook. We are there, by the way, live YouTube at Hot News Talk Radio and Facebook at Nooga Radio. He says that mass abstract testing, anonymously scored, is the torture centrifuge. I just love his vocabulary. It's the torture centrifuge whirling away precious resources of time and money from productive use and routing it into the hands of testing magicians. Okay, that's the problem with mass standardized testing. It happens only when the tormented allow it. Here is the divide and conquer mechanism par excellence, the wizard wand which establishes a bogus rank order among the schooled, inflicts prodigies of stress upon the unwary, causes suicides, family breakups, and grossly perverts the learning process while producing, and here's the kicker, while producing no information of any genuine worth. Testing cannot predict who will become the best surgeon, college professor, or taxi cab driver. It predicts nothing which would impel any sane human being to inquire after these scores. Standardized testing is very good evidence of our national leadership is bankrupt and has been so for a very long time. The two-party system has been unable to give us reliable leadership. Its system of campaign finance almost guarantees we get managers, not leaders. And so he proposes the I prefer not to mantra of Bartleby the Scrivener, who ends up living in his office and refusing a severance offered to him in Herman Melville's narrative. And he ends up dying a pauper, buried anonymously in a pauper's grave. He says that we should break the grip of official testing on students, parents, and teachers, and we will have taken the first logical step in revitalizing education. But nobody would believe this step can be taken politically. Too much money and power is involved to allow the necessary legislative action. The dynamics of our society tend toward the creation of public opinion, not any response to it. There's only one major exception to that rule: taking to the streets. And that's what the Bartleby solution is in his mind, as he tells about it in the afterword of this volume. When we say no, we'd rather not, we effectively are taking to the streets. And we're not thinking here of reforming public schools. We're not thinking here of having Dr. Johnson have some special help, right? Maybe a new nonprofit organization can come in and bring some relief to the 43,000 inmates in Hamilton County. Well, no, there is no reform that's possible. It simply has to be, the whole thing simply has to collapse on itself from disuse, right? From disuse. People no longer use it. People understand that we have books, that we can own books very, very inexpensively. They know that we have the internet. They know we have diversified economy. They know we have the sharing economy. They know we have co-ops. They know that we have homeschooling. We have homeschooling. We have tutorials. We have private relationships. Think what benefit it would be if someone like you, my listener, hired me to teach your son journalism. Think about that. I talked with an intern yesterday, an intern prospect, and I said, he was saying, well, do you pay me? I really need the money. I said, well, I think I might talk with your dad about him paying me $500 a week to have you as my intern. Because what you're getting with me in questions of law, journalism, coverage, media is an education. This education that you would get with me is worth more than what you would pay for at a university. And so the question is, am I going to pay him? Well, ideally, I would pay him to be my intern. But if he really thought about it, he would not be able to get access to someone like me in a school, right? It just wouldn't it couldn't happen. He couldn't be involved in the real production of news, the real registering of news and analysis, and having a business to run at the same time. It wouldn't happen. You just couldn't get that view in school. By private solutions, by private teachers, right? By apprenticeships, we can have revitalization of education. And there's very little interest in this. I'm afraid we're so used to schools, we're so used to centralized solutions. We're so used to administrators and bureaucrats making decisions for us that we've lost the means of evaluating educational opportunities. But there is hope. Again, the Expo for Homeschooling, July 21, 22 at Camp Jordan in East Ridge. That's Friday and Saturday, all day, both days. This is David Tulis. I'll see you there.
Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM.
Does your business have enough clients?